Hello, good evening and welcome to episode 5 of the eFootball podcast. My name is still Dan Tracy and that means I'm still your host of the newest podcast on the scene. Once again, I'm joined by Notts, Everton and Republic of Ireland midfielder James McCarthy. How are you, James?
Still not him, I am still my own man, don't worry, I'm great mate, how are you?
Perfect mate, thanks very much. And what with it being the international break, it's fitting I'm handing out a debut cap. Joining us tonight also is Ryan Power, but he's otherwise known as the Midfield General. Ryan runs a website by the same name and it's fair to say he's a bit of an England fan. So how are you, Ryan? And please tell us more about what you do.
Evening, Dan. I'm very well, thank you very much. Honoured to be earning my first cap, as you so eloquently put it this evening. And yeah, massive England fan. Obviously, it's the eve of the Germany game as we're speaking tonight. So literally, as soon as we finish here, I'm going to be setting myself off to bed for the 3:30 start tomorrow to make the trek over to Germany.
Wow.
As is, all the good things that we do when we're off to follow football at silly hours in the morning. So very much looking forward to that, and then back for the Russia game, not the Lithuania game, sorry, on Sunday. So it's all go in the international window.
The things we do for football, eh, guys? So the question I ask every week, which is the most important: have you watched any football in the last 7 days?
Always, of course, mate.
Good work, James. What about yourself, Ryan?
Yes. Seldom a day goes past.
Excellent. So your homework has been done. That's great. So, an action-packed show in store, I would hope. Later on, we'll have a bit of an international focus, what with it being the international break. But first, let's focus on the Premier League. And Chelsea, they're once again at a canso in the way they're winning games in the Premier League. Perhaps there was a bit of a struggle at Stoke, but realistically, James, would you say this is the final hurdle in their sort of race to win the Premier League? Do you reckon that really is job done now?
Yeah, they're certainly on the home straight towards the Premier League title again. 10 points clear at the top. It really would have been lovely to see Stoke hold on to the win, maybe even just the draw. But yeah, it's Chelsea's to lose now. It has to be said. Even though they were behind at Stoke, you were always confident that they were going to find that the equaliser and then eventually the winner. They left it pretty late, but I think they always kind of had it in the bag, even without Hazard. They always had it in the bag to take the 3 points back to London with them.
Ryan, would you say a result like that is the sign of champions?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of those as well where it was a slightly different type of game for them as well, wasn't it? It was one where they actually had to sort of get their sleeves up, roll the sleeves up and get stuck in a little bit. It was obviously a bit of a more physical encounter, and they left it very, very late as well, didn't they? You can throw all the cliches you like at it, saying that the champions often do leave things late. To snatch the points, which is what they did. And as James sort of touched on there as well, it was probably never really in doubt, though. I think most people probably would have expected them to capitalise, and they did. So I think that everyone's probably been saying for a little while now that it's been theirs to throw away, and that's never been more true now. I really can't see anyone catching them. They just seeming to keep grinding out the results, don't they? Week after week after week. And again, that was even without their talisman for the season, Hazard, as well. So I think that it's going to be some blue ribbons on the trophy in not very many games' time.
Absolutely. I mean, we're looking at 9 games to go now for most teams, and you're looking at Chelsea having to lose 3, perhaps 4, for Tottenham or Man City to get into a league-winning position. And with that short amount of games to go, and the fact that Chelsea have lost so few at this point, you do sort of think it would have to be an incredible collapse for Chelsea not to win it now. And to be honest,
I mean, looking at the games they've got left to go, you just can't see them losing 4, can you?
No,
really?
No, you can't. So you're right. That's,
you can't see any team in the Premier League coming up against Chelsea and beating them comfortably. Unfortunately, that Spurs game aside, the 2-0 win, you can see this Chelsea team just walking over any of the other 19 teams in the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean,
agreed.
We'll touch on Tottenham now, because no matter how well they're playing, Chelsea just aren't slipping up. So for Tottenham, it's every game's a must-win game, but there's no sort of, we can't get any closer. 10 points. It's still, I mean, although they chopped it down from 13-10 with their win on Sunday. But Ryan, I'll throw this one to you first. I mean, life without Harry Kane doesn't seem too bad at the moment for Tottenham, does it?
Well, it doesn't at the moment, no, but I'm not convinced they've necessarily got all that much strength and depth up top, really. We'll see, won't we? I mean, the Janssen hasn't exactly been smashing them in or been prolific since they got him, have they? And they seem to have been more reliant on their midfield for goals. But, as you say, by the same token, they're still winning, aren't they? So it's difficult to argue against that, really.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to take that one game in isolation because that's all we've seen at the moment in this sort of Kane absence era. But I guess, James, a lot was going to be down to the supporting cast doing their bit on Sunday, and I guess they did exactly that, didn't they?
Yeah, I think we always seem to say about how Spurs are going to struggle without Harry Kane and how we're going to struggle for goals. But when you've got players in the form of Eriksen and of Ali, even Son, who's chipping in with the goals, but it is really that midfield duo of Eriksen and Ali, who I think they've both contributed at least 10, 12 goals this season. Ali's up to 16 now. It's absolutely crazy, and you know there's teams in the Premier League whose strikers aren't even chipping in with that many goals, and so to have two players who are both firing on all cylinders. It's goals from absolutely everywhere. It's goals out of nothing, and I have to say that Spurs are an absolute joy to watch at the moment. And even in the absence of Harry Kane, you have to say that I can't see the goals drying up anytime soon. And hopefully this may continue to end the season. You say it's probably going to get frustrating, the fact that we can't catch Chelsea, but as long as we win our remaining games, we can say that we did our very best. We did everything we could to try and win the Premier League title, and there was just one team who were better than us, and we can hold our hands up at the end of that. As long as we don't slip off towards the end of the season, then I'd be more than happy with the second place finish.
I think as well they've got the other thing they've got going for them, Spurs, is where their defence has been so good. It's not like they are quite as reliant on scoring quite as many goals at the other end. So they've got that advantage as well. And it's also a bit funny, wasn't it? Because if you compare it with last season, where it almost looked like no one almost wanted to win the league at one point, and there were slip-ups going off left, right and centre. And this year, I think that Spurs have probably played much, much better. But sadly, the bar has been raised that much higher, hasn't it? Which has probably meant that they're going to fall short again.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if Tottenham were to say finish third this season, and you compared it to last season, I'd say personally, I don't know about you, James, as both Spurs fans, but you'd probably say that's almost more of an achievement because, like you say, it's almost a harder league to finish third this season because of the team once again having their resurgence. So obviously,
rightly so. There was you say nobody really wanted to win the Premier League last season. The standards certainly dropped. I mean, Chelsea dropped off completely, and so they were out of the title race fairly early, as were Arsenal, as were everyone apart from Tottenham and Leicester, really. And so, and you're right in saying that it was as if no one wanted to win the league. Whereas this season, there's been a lot more teams coming out being competitive and seeing that trophy was for the taking, and you have to hold your hands up and say fair play to Chelsea. That I mean, we can't deny that they do deserve to win the Premier League this season. They've been probably the best team in the Premier League, and that's nothing on Spurs because we've been absolutely awesome again for the second year in a row. It's a great time to be a Spurs fan, but yeah, it's just a shame that we missed our chance last year because and then we said it at the time that it was our biggest chance, and it's kind of proving that to be that. Our last season was probably our biggest chance to win the Premier League, but not to be. But no, I am happy with where we are at the moment, definitely.
And I think going back to Kane's absence, Tottenham's next, say, 4 fixtures are quite fortuitous in the terms of opposition. There's no team in the top 10, so I can't remember the exact order, but we're looking at teams like Burnley, Watford, Bournemouth, I can't remember the other one, perhaps Swansea, I think. So it's not a bad run to have your star striker out. If Tottenham can, say, get all 4 wins from them, then they will probably allow themselves to get a buffer going into games such as Arsenal at home, Man United at home. So this sort of next period could be quite pivotal in the race for the top 4. Do you not think, Ryan?
Yeah, I would agree with that wholeheartedly, and I would fully expect them to get those points under proverbial belt. Have they put a date yet on? You guys would know better than I. Have they got a date yet for Kane when they've expected back? Not that you can always read too much into what they tell you these days, but
they said it was less than his ankle ligament damage before, and that was around 7 weeks. So I'm guessing they're looking at about
the next
5 to 6 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
I mean, the target is for him to be back in time for the semi-final against Chelsea.
Yeah, quite. And so the and the Arsenal game, presumably at the end of April, is obviously when you're going to want him firing as well. So yeah, I mean, and that's the thing though as well, isn't it, chaps? If you've got to, if you've got to beat the I don't want to call them mediocre teams, but the sort of those mid-table teams where you think, well, we should be picking up the points this week. We've got to get the points, but it's still about grinding out those results, isn't it? Which some of the other teams around Spurs haven't managed to do as well this season. Specifically, Liverpool and Arsenal. Who haven't managed to do that, and that's probably the difference of why you are ahead of them at the moment. But of course, it's so tight near the top that any one slip and it could all change, couldn't it? So it's going to make for an exciting run-in, that's for sure.
Absolutely. I think you're right. Those games are almost the sort of bread and butter, and if you want to be sort of pushing for Champions League place, or dare I say the Championship, they are the sort of games you need to be winning. Which brings brings me very nicely onto Arsenal. So, chaps, I mean, it's like Groundhog Day at the moment for Arsenal, isn't it? They beat Lincoln and it's papers over the cracks and everything's all right for a week, but bang, they're straight back into the thick of it. I mean, James, what went wrong on Saturday?
Well, I think it's fairly easy to see what went wrong on Saturday. They're defending from set pieces, which was West Brom, always going to be West Brom's biggest asset, really. Their defending from set pieces was absolutely awful. And when you've got a player like Gareth McCauley, a player like Craig Dawson, who are both just so brilliant in the air and so good at beating their man and getting to the front post, getting to the back post, and converting from those set pieces, and yet you've got absolutely nobody marking them. I'm guessing you guys have both seen the picture of Craig Dawson when he's in midair, when they've got 5 or 6 players who are stood in that 6-yard box who are just stood back watching him. And even after, you can be mistaken for, you can be forgiven for letting that happen once, but letting it happen twice in both exactly the same fashion is really unforgivable. And you can understand the frustrations of the Arsenal fans. I certainly can, especially when it was said before the game that was going to be West Brom's biggest asset. It was really probably all they had over Arsenal. They weren't going to win the game like playing a passing, flowing game. They weren't going to play counter-attacking football. They were going to rely on their big lads at set pieces, and it must be so disappointing from their point of view, as hilarious as it is from our point of view, that they failed to address that. I mean, you can't take it away from West Brom. I think they've been absolutely brilliant this season. They're only 3 or 4 points away from beating their all-time best season already, and you have to take a step back and say well done to them for that. But again, you have to say Arsenal, you really need to prepare for games like this, especially when their assets are so obvious.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting as well, wasn't it? Sorry, Dan. It was interesting as well. Much furore was made of this. Or when West Brom get to 40, they give up, and Arsenal will probably roll over them, and I'm sure a lot of people probably had Arsenal on their coupon for an away win, but it didn't work out like that at all, did it? And I think that a couple of points. One, when they showed the header, one of the Dawes headers, his closest 2 people to him were both West Brom players, which is just absolutely ridiculous, where there was literally 3 of them almost, fighting for the header, which is just completely unforgivable, really. I'm sure that there's lots of people in the hierarchy that are absolutely, looking at that with astoundment. But I think also, does it say more about Arsenal as well, in that they've maybe given up a bit of their fight under Arsene, possibly? I don't know. It was a pretty lacklustre performance, and that's being generous to them, really, isn't it? It looked like so few of their players were actually fighting for each other. They got completely outfought, and whilst not wishing to take anything away from West Brom, I think that you'd be expecting a bit more if you were an Arsenal fan, really.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you, Ryan, but do you reckon this is proof that Wenger's lost the dressing room and these players don't want to play for him anymore?
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, I think you've absolutely hit the nail on the proverbial head there. I think that is the greatest, probably the biggest demonstration of that we've maybe seen as well, because there's a lot of cloud over what's happening, which I don't think has helped the situation. I don't know if maybe the players are partial to more information than what comes out to the greater public. I'd imagine they probably are. But I think that this display has shown that, as you say, maybe them sort of making their own votes in the way they played. They didn't look like a team who wanted to play and fight for their manager. And in fact, it's an interesting parallel to if you look at what has happened at Leicester, where they weren't playing well under Ranieri, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but what then happened when the change made, they looked like a different team all of a sudden. And that sort of fight and desire that now Leicester are demonstrating again is perhaps what Arsenal are currently lacking. So maybe there are parallels in between the two.
Yeah, I was talking the other day about how, and I've made the exact same comparison as you just done, Ryan, in that if you take the kind of reinvigoration that's happened at Leicester and apply that to Arsenal, that's terrifying. It really is scary. And I was thinking about it, and it's terrifying because Arsenal, they have got some devastatingly good players. They have got a really, really good squad full of players that would fully be deserving of winning the Premier League. And if you take out the only toxicity, which is, I suppose it's Wenger, and if you take that out and replace that with someone who's going to give them a bit of a kick up the backside and get them playing properly, if that team gets playing properly, then they're a real, real danger, and that is something to be really scared of.
They've got to be careful, though, haven't they, James? Because if they dilly-dally for too long, then how many of those players are going to leave? And you go from the world-class squad to, just another team that's going to be good enough to come in the top 4 or 5.
That's what you've got at the moment with these contract rebellions, how these top-class players, your Sanchez and your Ozil, are both refusing to sign contracts. And that, I mean, I'm pretty sure you guys must have heard that apparently there's a new 2-year deal for Wenger on the way.
So I did see, or hear on the radio, if that's to be believed. Which again will be interesting, won't it, to see therefore what happens in their next game, as to see whether or not that they continue to fight or not for him. Because if they go out and get capitulated again, then that really would speak volumes, really, wouldn't it? Who have they got next? They got Man City next, haven't they?
That's right. Yeah, Man City at home, haven't they? So
Man City at home. So if they get turned over at home in that, then oh my God, there's going to be mad gooners throwing their season tickets left, right, and centre. I would imagine. Yeah.
Well,
Arsenal will be going mad.
You're right. It's getting nasty, isn't it? You're getting toxic, I think is the word, really, and it's sad to see in a sense that Wenger's been obviously a great servant to the club, but you're right, if you sort of then point to the parallel of Leicester, everyone thought, it's a terrible decision because Ranieri's won the league, but look at them now, they're absolutely flying, so it's hard.
Yeah, Claudio who?
Yeah, well, absolutely, I mean, they're in the Champions
League. Already, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Champions League quarter-finals, 3 straight league wins. They're not going to get relegated now. They're absolutely fine. But, I mean, you've got to be cruel to be kind at times, haven't you? And I think, do Arsenal really need Wenger for another 2 years if it's going to be to the detriment of their squad? If they're going to then go on to lose the likes of Ozil and Sanchez? But on the flip side, be careful with what you wish for, because if Arsene Wenger then did go and they start finishing 6th, 7th, then, they're no better for it, are they? So,
why do we feel that is? Because it seems to me, and I guess you guys might have a different, potentially more biased opinion. I don't know, but I don't know. From an outside perspective, how I look at it, it seems odd that he has so much power. It's almost like he would be in on any decision of whether or not they wanted to get rid of him, which seems a little bit strange because that's almost like player power taken to another whole extreme level, whereby, you'd have a board of directors discussing the future of a manager, discussing whether or not they're going to sack him. But at Arsenal, he's sat in the room and he gets a say almost, it seems. Which just
surely the bloke's earned that. He's given 20 years service. He's brought countless trophies. He's brought them countless success. You could probably say that Arsenal wouldn't be where they are now if they didn't have him. Surely he's earned the right to sit in on decisions and be a really
big.
What
about his own future?
Look at what Ferguson had at United. Ferguson was United, and that was because he earned it. He brought them countless success, and I think that's the same thing. He's earned it.
I mean, I'm definitely not in any way taking away anything that he's done, because it's absolutely incredible. But as I say, it just seems to me a little bit strange. I mean, maybe they feel that the person they want to replace him isn't available or isn't yet ready or whatever. I don't know. And I guess they're also maybe a little bit scared about, in fact, what you just touched on, James, with what did happen at Manchester United, where obviously they didn't get the replacement correct first time or second time, and I'm sure they don't want that to happen either, because all of a sudden life will be even worse if they're finishing, 7th or 8th, heaven forbid.
Yeah, they're very good points, actually, and I think you probably approach it from a different angle that not many have, and certainly not from a sort of Spurs point of view. I don't know. Is there really a right answer, really? Because the fan base is so split. It's a growing fan base, which is sort of becoming louder and louder with Wenger out. But again, you've got these people that are willing to sort of back him through thick and thin. It's a lot more thin than thick at the moment. So whatever decision is made is never going to appease everyone, is it? So it's going to be a very, very interesting few weeks. And also, if they do finish outside the top 4, how much of a bearing is that going to have on Wenger's decision to stay? Is that decision made by him? Who knows? I mean, this one's going to run and run, I think. But like I say, we could honestly talk about Arsenal for hours on end, and it wouldn't be a boring show. But we do have to sort of move on. So I'll push it on a little bit. Manchester City versus Liverpool. It ended up a draw, 1-1. It could have been about 7-7, really. Ryan, a great game for the neutral.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah, I watched it. Yeah, enjoyed it completely. As you say, it was. It could have been a lot more than that. Both teams had good chances that were squandered, didn't they? Lallana and Aguero's chances spring to mind. But I mean, yeah, great game for the neutral. I think that overall the result was probably a fair one. I mean, if anything, I guess for overall on reflection, I would say that both teams had periods of the game, didn't they? But it was a thoroughly entertaining encounter.
Absolutely, and from a Spurs point of view, James, a great result because those two teams have sort of cancelled each other out there, haven't they?
Definitely, yeah. It's 2 drop points for the two of them, and you've got to thank the likes of Adam Lallana for some horrendous misses in that game. There really was some really poor finishing on the show, which is something you wouldn't really expect. But yeah, it was an absolutely great game of football to watch, even for the neutral. Everyone thought it was going to be goal central with two teams that have got absolutely brilliant attacks but absolutely awful defences, and that's what it kind of was. But they just didn't have their shooting boots on, and that Lallana chance is the one that springs to mind. I mean, what a huge miss that was, and I guess he'll be absolutely kicking himself now. But yeah, a great game. It could have been a lot more than 1-1, but as you say, I'd say probably a fair result with the two teams cancelling it out, and also a great result for Spurs because it's 4 points dropped between the two of them.
Absolutely. I think they call that a gilt-edge miss, don't they? But Ryan, I believe you're from the Bournemouth area, and want to touch on Bournemouth quickly because myself and James were ready to read Bournemouth's obituary, 3 weeks ago, and they made us look very silly, with 7 points out of their last 9. So what do you think Eddie Howe's done in the last few weeks to sort of stop the rot and get them back to winning ways?
Well, good question. I mean, they've certainly managed to pick up their form, haven't they? Which has been so important because they couldn't seem to get a win for love nor money coming into the start of the year. And I think one of the biggest problems that they have had has been that their defence has been pretty much the exact same defence that they won the championship with. Down to the man. So that obviously had to change, and obviously they did have the loan signing who went back to Chelsea, who they tried to sign, and that fell through as well. So I think that they had big defensive issues there, but it almost seems now that they seem to have taken a bit more of an approach of, we'll attempt to just sort of score more goals than we concede, almost a bit like the old Kevin Keegan approach, which is wonderful for any neutral fan watching, I'm sure. But I'm pleased that they have managed to stop the rot somewhat, because I think that, I'm not actually a Bournemouth fan myself, even though I have moved here in more recent years, but they are a team I think that lots of people view quite fondly, and I know it's certainly an away day that lots of fans look forward to as well, because it's a nice place to come. It's a good day out.
Yeah, I'll attest to that. I've been to a Bournemouth away day. Great day out that was. So, I can't remember too much more of it, but that's about all I can say. We stay around the bottom of the table. Eddie Howe has certainly got himself out of a mess. One man who didn't get himself out of a mess, James, was Aitor Karanka. He finally got the boot after that goal drought that never seemed to have wanted to end. Was that the right decision? Yeah,
it's another one of those Leicester situations, where they just need to mix it up a little bit. And, we were saying last week that no one's scared of Middlesbrough. No one's scared to go to the Riverside. They really are. They were really just stuck in a rut. and that goal drought, as you say, went on for too long, and the goal that they grabbed at Man United was nothing special either. It was a goal that was really given to them, and if they hadn't capitalised on that chance, I think they could have packed their bags and just taken themselves off to the Championship without any hassle. But yeah, that goal drought came to an end, but not so spectacular style really. And so I think the sacking of Karanka is as harsh as it sounds. It was necessary. The only problem you would say is that there isn't an obvious replacement. But I'm sure that's the kind of thing that they've got sorted. They'll have probably had their successor sorted out before they even told Karanka that he was no longer needed. And so hopefully Middlesbrough will be able to turn it round. Hopefully there'll be teams who are scared to go to the Riverside, but at the moment I can't see it happening. I think they really are. They're stuck in it, and I can't see them getting out of there anytime soon, I'm afraid.
I think in terms of a replacement, a lot of managers will be hedging their bets because they won't want to sort of perhaps take the job now. They'll want to know if Middlesbrough are still a Premier League team. So I can imagine Steve Agnew being in charge at the end of the season because perhaps is not the candidate they want, or candidates are willing to take the job with 8-9 games to go. And Ryan, I need to ask you, because we've asked all our guests at this point, more of an advantage because you've had a couple more weeks further down the line, but if it was gun to the head time, what three teams are going to not beat the drop, in your opinion?
Well, Sunderland are obviously in all sorts of trouble, so I think that they will go. I think that Borough will also go now. It looks as though they were. I mean, they just can't score, can they? I mean, their goal scoring record has been absolutely atrocious all season, and you really feel for the fans who actually pay their money, where you'd at least expect, some amount of entertainment, or at least the occasional goal to cheer, which they've really not got. And then the last, I did think up until probably 2 weeks ago that Palace would go down, but now it looks like they might not. So I will say Swansea. I think Hull might just claw their way out of it. And even though Swansea have also upped their game, both Hull and Swansea have really upped their game, haven't they, since the new managers have come in, which I think it shows what a new lease of life in the dugout can do for both those teams. But I will say Swansea down, hopefully.
Wow. You're the first one to go for the Swans. The Sunderland Middlesbrough.
Am I really?
Yeah. Sunderland Middlesbrough are very sort of general consensus, but you're the first one to go for the Swans. So interesting. We'll have to see if that's correct come May. I'm just going to quickly take the opportunity to do the social media bits because this show's absolutely flying past. It's been great. So if you want to follow us on Twitter or Instagram, it's @e_footballnet. If you want to follow us on Facebook, it's facebook.com/efootballpage. If you want to check out the website, it's www.efootballonline.com. If you've got any questions or comments for the show, you can tweet me, which is @DanTracy1983, or you can tweet @e_footballnet. So that's all the social media. We're going to have a very quick break, and then we're going to talk England. Okay, welcome back. Hope you've had your Lucasade and you're all refreshed, because now it's time to talk Three Lions, and we've got no better person than the midfield general himself. Cheers for being on board, Ryan. Hope you're enjoying it.
Very much so, yeah.
Excellent. James, you're still there, I hope?
Of course I am, mate. Listening intently.
Absolutely. Let's dive straight into England then. Ryan, the current England squad, your views, especially with the lack of forward options?
Well, there was a distinct lack of forward options, wasn't there? And but I'll tell you what, for all the issues we have up front, which we obviously do, I think that some of those issues are evened off a little bit by the plethora of quality midfielders that we seem to have at the moment. So I think that's where a lot of the talking points for this squad came. I think the majority, obviously the goalkeepers and the defenders largely picked themselves, I think, really, with this squad. There were no great surprises, really. Then with regards to the midfield, I mean, I was surprised to see Livermore in. I was also quite surprised to see no Theo Walcott. I thought he might have made it. But I was hugely elated to see the inclusion of James Ward-Prowse and also Nathan Redmond as well, both coming up from the under-21s, who obviously are playing both for Saints regularly. I think that is massive. Our under-21s are a delight to watch at times. I actually went to see them at St Mary's against Italy at the end of last year, and they play some brilliant football. And I think that the bringing through of the key under-21 players to actually make a mark in the senior squad will be a large factor on whether or not we have any success over the next 6 to 8 years, because there's a great crop of players there. However, there have been in years gone by, but so many of them just never seem to quite make it into the senior squad for whatever reason. And I really hope that we can start to get more of a culture of actually bringing people through that system, which I'm also hopeful that will happen more with Southgate, given his own route having come through the under-21s himself, as it were, as a manager. So I was really pleased to see those in. I was quite pleased to see Jermaine Defoe get a call-up. I mean, he didn't really have much choice, did he? I would rather have seen him than Andy Carroll called up, quite frankly. But by the same token, is it a bit of a meaningless call-up? He's not going to go to Russia, is he? So, I don't know, sometimes you do think, what is each player, what is their role going to be? Why have you picked them for moving forward with a bit more foresight than just these 2 games? Maybe because there were so many injuries, there just weren't many other options. It's not that he's not playing well, it's that he's now, 34, 35 or something, Defoe? So I don't think he's going to have too many more games ahead of him. But overall, I think there were a couple of inclusions that pricked the ears up a little bit, but I think that on the whole it was fairly positive, given on what he had to choose from. He can't magic players out of his hat, can he? So, he can only choose what's out there.
Absolutely. You made a good point about Theo Walcott. I'll bring that one over to you, James. Do you reckon that was the right decision not to pick him in the England squad?
Yeah, definitely. I think he's definitely not setting the world alight. And the thing about Theo Walcott is that he's been an up-and-coming player for about 6 or 7 years now. You'd probably say that his inclusion in that 2006 World Cup squad was probably a bit soon, and he wasn't ready, and that kind of built him up to be a player that he wasn't exactly, and he's never really just hit that top level. He's banged the goals in at a pretty slow rate. It's taken him an awful long time to kind of cement his place in that Arsenal first team, and he's probably still not even there at the moment. And so, yeah, I think it's perfectly right that he's been left out of the England squad. As you say, we've got some players who are in great form. I think Nathan Redmond really is one that's to keep an eye on. I watched him a lot when he was at Birmingham City, and he was straight away you could tell that he was a real talent. And I think we've got to start looking at the future, because that is that's what gives the German national side such good success, is that their youth teams are so well structured. They get taught the right kind of game from a young age, whereas I suppose our grassroots football relies heavily on who's the biggest lad we can stick up front. And so I love seeing players like James Ward-Prowse who really do play football with their head up. And I think the best example of that has to be Harry Winks, and I'm really disappointed that he wasn't included in the England squad. I think he'd surely he's got England future midfielder written all over him. He's been absolutely brilliant in his cameo appearances. You can understand reasons why he hasn't been involved, because he's not starting for Spurs. He's coming on with cameo roles in the last 20 minutes, but those cameo roles, he's been absolutely brilliant, and he's definitely the kind of guy that he needs to be in and around the squad and learning the England way from now, really. And we can start sculpting that kind of player for as you say, Russia. And there's players who are in that England squad who have stagnated. They're not going anywhere, and why not include a youngster who's not going to start? Maybe he might even not get on the pitch, but he may as well be in and around the England setup, and I think that's what we should be doing in other positions as well. I'd love to see a few more, like a young striker. Maybe you look at the likes of Tammy Abraham, who's absolutely banging them in. Yeah, he's banging them in the Championship, League One, or whichever it is. But you'd like to see him kind of, or someone like that, in and around the squad, just kind of being merited for their good form and showing them that they really have got a future around the setup. As you rightly say, Jermaine Defoe, he's not going to make it to Russia, and there's probably a few more players in that squad who aren't, and so these are the games that we should be preparing for the future, I think. But yeah, you're right, there's not too many eyebrows raised throughout the squad. When we're talking about players like Theo Walcott, whether they should be in there or not, you really have to say that it's not the most inspiring England squad, but it kind of picked itself,
Yeah, it's good to see. Sorry, Dan. It's good to see Ross Barkley recalled again as well after he'd been dropped for the previous ones. So I was pleased to see him back, because much like James mentioned in terms of building for the future, surely England's future midfield is ultimately going to be built at least partly around him, I would hope. So it's good to see him back in as well.
Yeah, that's right. And I guess also, what with it being a March international friendly, there's very few friendly dates available. So these are the perfect opportunities to sort of perhaps look a bit wider out. So why call Theo Walcott again? Because you're not going to learn anything new, are you? So these are the perfect opportunities to call up players like Nathan Redmond, James Ward-Prowse. I think you also touched on good points in the fact that England at the moment, they don't quite have a full connect with their under-21s. If you compare them to, say, Spain and Germany, they look at it more as almost like a club setup, where if their star strikers are injured, they then don't look at the sixth best, oldest striker. They'll then come down a level to the under-21s. But we still have a bit of apprehension to do that, and I think you'd like to think that Gareth Southgate will now sort of connect the dots and have more trust in that under-21s and sort of come from within. Is that a fair statement to make?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think he will as well. He's already shown signs of that, because already with the examples that we've just discussed there, that's a lot more under-21s than we've had in already. And obviously Harry Winks, that you touched on earlier, James, obviously he represents the under-21s himself, so there's every chance, hopefully, that an eye is kept on them. I know that he obviously goes to watch them. Obviously he used to manage them pretty successfully as well. And I hope that they do get brought through. But with all of that said, it does no good to have them in the squad and then just never ever see what they can do. So, and I think that's one of the things that England have done in the past, much to their detriment, where some of the fringe players have finally broken into the squad and you think, let's see what they can do, but then they never actually get on the pitch for whatever reason. It is a friendly at the end of the day, or certainly the game tomorrow is. Does the actual result matter as much as how the team play and if we get to see what certain individuals can do? At the time, I guess the result probably does matter if you're there watching it, but ultimately it's more important to see what some of those players can do. So it'd be disappointing if we don't get to see any of these lads, really. Obviously, having them involved in the squad is great. I'm sure they will learn a lot from that, but ultimately we need to see, the only way to see whether or not they're good enough to make the step up is to put them in, isn't it? And what better team to put them up against than, the Germans.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want to get chonked 5-0 on Wednesday night, but ultimately, these are the kind of games that you're going to learn from, aren't you? That this is where you know who can be in the setup going forward. So the fact that it's not quite a squad that, is what we'd consider a full-strength squad, but again, that gives us positives in the sense that new players can also be blooded. Absolutely.
I don't think for a second he's going to start with them all, but it would be nice if they could get some pitch time, albeit, the last 20 minutes or something.
Yeah, I hope it's just something a bit different, really. Why not sort of take a few chances? And I guess Gareth Southgate being appointed England manager was a bit of a chance, but again, was there any real options at playing it safe, perhaps? James, your views on Southgate's reign so far?
Fairly uninspiring. We haven't really had much of a chance to see what changes he's going to make. But I'm happy with the direction it's going in. I think the thing that we can all be happy and all agreed on is what Ryan touched on earlier about Redmond and Ward-Prowse, in that he's certainly looking at the future. He's looking at these young players, and he's not. He's not afraid to drop any of the, dinosaurs. There's no point even Wayne Rooney, there's no point even someone like that being in and around the squad, because they're not going to be around in 2 World Cups time, and players like Redmond and Ward-Prowse, they're going to be the basis of that team. And I think that's what I actually wanted Southgate as manager all along, because of his under-21s experience, and with our under-21s being so successful, they win the Toulon tournament and things like that. We've got a brilliant under-21 setup, and it would be great to see those players kind of moving through the system, because they clearly deserve it.
Yeah, I would go along with that. And it's funny, actually, James, because I thought I was the only person who wanted Gareth Southgate before he got the job. So I'm pleased to hear that I'm not the only person that felt that way, because I also felt that he was the perfect choice for the job. I feel that he's done all right in the opening games so far. As you say, it hasn't been completely inspirational, but for large periods we played pretty well against Spain and were pretty, they fell asleep, didn't they, for the last 5 minutes. Had they not done that, then I think we all been, screaming from the rooftops about that particular performance and potential result. I think that he's said a lot of the right things. I think he's done a lot of the good moves with the squad thus far. And I think one of the biggest criticisms that he was getting aimed at him before he even managed for one game was that he was going to be an FA yes man, that he's going to purely pick on reputation and he's not going to pick on form, and everyone gets on their high horse about it. And I really feel he's proven those doubters wrong, because he has picked on form and he hasn't picked on reputation. He's shown that he's happy to leave out Rooney, who I'm pretty sure is still the captain technically, So he is proving his doubters wrong, and I think that he will, albeit maybe slowly, start to win people round. And I think one of the biggest things he probably has going against him is that maybe he isn't necessarily the most charismatic person in the world. And I think sometimes, completely harshly, that goes against him, even though that's got absolutely nothing to do with how well he can do the job. I think that he's showing at the moment that he could be a really good manager, and I really hope that it's going to be a real long-term appointment, as we've already touched on several times, with a lot of those under-21s all coming through, and looking forward for 6 or 8 years' time, when, who knows, we actually might have a half-decent team at that point, who have also all been playing together for the previous 10 years. We've seen that works with the Germans. That also is the same situation that they had in Spain, which won them World Cups and European Championships. So if it's been good enough for them, we can see the successor model, because both those countries have had that success. So why wouldn't we want to replicate it? Go along the path that's already been mapped out to success, as it were.
Absolutely. I mean, England fans, by and large, are a very fickle bunch, and you're right, it wasn't necessarily an appointment that got people jumping for joy. But that said, get a few wins under his belt and qualify for the World Cup. Doesn't look a bad manager at all. And dare I say, if he does a good job, and it's not assume he's going to sort of win it. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but the corner can be quickly turned with sort of the momentum of a few results, and then he's got everyone behind him. So I think just give him time. Do you know what I mean? It's just
exactly. I think one of the things that the fans look for, certainly something that I look for, is you just hope for some form of progression, don't you? You just hope that you are getting better than you were in some capacity, and you're not just constantly sort of treading water, and I think that at the moment, from when he took over to where I feel he is at least on a upward trajectory, shall we say, and as long as that continues, I don't really think you can ask much more than that, because in theory, if the time axis is infinite, then you're gonna get to the top eventually, aren't you?
You're right, it's just time, and why not? If we keep sort of making progress and winning games, holding our own against bigger nations, like Spain, I think if anything, that gave us a bit of a grounding, because you're right, had we won, it'd be like, yeah, we're well beaters, we're the absolute best.
That's right.
It was a win, it was a draw that felt like a defeat at the time, but again, it's not perhaps the worst result in the world, because it gives us more of a sort of realistic approach to going forward. James, do you think perhaps after the big Sam furore, it was perhaps like a necessary, safe approach, and it was just something like this reboot, start again, and just try and build some progress going forward?
Yeah, definitely. I think a safe appointment is definitely what it was with Southgate. But it was exactly what I wanted to see. I really didn't want another Fabio Capello kind of situation, because I didn't like that. I'm a big fan of having an Englishman running the English national team. I think that is just how it needs to be done, and that Southgate, although you can rightly say, Ryan, he's not the most charismatic man in the world. He certainly doesn't set any hearts racing as a person, but he strikes me as the kind of bloke who could really get on with the players, really build a relationship with the team, and that's something that's proven to work. Look at Pochettino at Tottenham. They're all best mates and they all play for each other. It's great to watch, and they play really well because they're playing for each other. And that's the kind of thing we need in the England setup. When it was people like Capello, you had no feeling that they were interacting at all. You had no feeling that they were building this kind of a family that like we have at Tottenham is the players are a family. We see that, you know, they spend all day, every day together. They're mates. They play for each other and they play as a team. And that's something that we really want to see with England. It's clear in the under 21s that they're all on the same wavelength. They're all on the same mindset. And so Southgate hopefully carries on this trend of getting those players involved and having a team that really clicks.
Yeah, I think that as you say, I completely agree with that, James. I also really wanted another Englishman, or the absolute minimum, someone who speaks English as their first language. You know, because I don't see how you can't have communication breakdowns if you are communicating in not your first language, however good it is as your second language. That there must be that issue. And also as well, the other thing which I was pleased why it came in for a bit of stability is that whoever the manager is, he can't make signings. He can't bring, additional players with him. So they've all got the same ultimate pool of players to choose from. So in the situation that we are in, we've got to try and make the very most of that situation. And I think they've realised that one good way to make the most of our situation is going to be to look to groom our incredibly good youth side, and not just the under-21s, the under-19s and the under-17s are also both excellent teams, to look to actually bring on some of these players as opposed to just wheeling out the same aged, ex-superstars, because that sort of short-term approach ultimately isn't going to get us anywhere. And I think that most fans have cottoned onto that now. That sort of golden era is long gone, and I think people are looking for something a bit different now.
Yeah, I think you're right. The future's certainly bright. It's perhaps not the brightest that it perhaps was in that golden generation, but at the same time it's not overhyped. So if anything, they've probably got a better chance of success. That's the future. Let's quickly go back to the past in Euro 2016. Probably everything's been said, but Ryan, I'd love to hear your views as a sort of England super fan. What went wrong?
Well, for me, I think the two biggest problems with it, and it pains me to think back, but I think the two biggest problems were that Roy Hodgson, and I think this became true of both these points I'm going to say, with the last friendly that we had prior to the tournament. We had the 3 friendlies prior to it, didn't we? And I think the last of the 3 was Turkey, and the issue was, I think it came clear that not only, firstly, did he not know what his best team was, but I also felt that he probably didn't know what his best formation was either. And going into the tournament, I just don't feel like we had enough of a cohesive unit that knew what they were doing, that everyone knew what their place was. And I feel that he wasn't sure himself which formation to play. He wasn't sure himself who his starting 11 was. And I think that indecisiveness seeped through the team, really. I mean, it was shocking, really, from start to finish, wasn't it? I mean, there were so few plus points, with the possible exception of maybe 2 or 3 players. It was shambolic, really, at best, wasn't it? And that's me using clean language to respect your podcast.
I appreciate that, Ryan. Thank you very much. James, have you got any views, or are you trying to forget everything about Euro 2016?
Oh yeah, mate, it's a real black spot for me. I got rid of that tournament as soon as I possibly could. But yeah, I think it's what we need to judge Southgate on, really, is we need to be going to these tournaments and at least competing. No one from anywhere is saying that Gareth Southgate should be taking England to Russia and winning the World Cup, but to at least compete and at least reach a knockout stage, a decent knockout stage is all we're asking for. All we're asking for is for the players to turn up, compete, show the players that we know that they can be, because there's some brilliant footballers in the England setup, and it's such a shame that they just never seem to click together. You're perfectly right in saying that Hodgson definitely didn't know his best 11. But then again, kind of no one knew their best 11. That everyone had their own opinion on who should be starting. Everyone had a different starting 11, and so it's a kind of an impossible job for Hodgson to be able to pick that But I think, there was too much chopping and changing done during the tournament.
With regards to that, James, sorry, when you say about there was all the chopping and changing, but he should have known what that best 11 was, shouldn't he, through the qualifying. You've got all the qualifying games. He's got 10 or 12 games there to work out, plus another 6 friendlies to work out what that 11 should be. And if he's not, even if he's only 95% sure, with a month to go, you've just got to roll the dice and just, I think, be stubborn and go for what you think is probably the best team, and not just try and shuffle your pack at the last minute and then leave everyone, without a clue as to what they're doing.
Yeah, of course. And there was a bit of shuffling of the pack going on during the tournament. You saw when Vardy and Sturridge both came off the bench against Wales and produced their goals, there were calls immediately for them to start the next game, and it was all just shambolic. Shambolic was really the word to use, and it's just even little things down to, I know it's been said a lot, but Harry Kane taking corners, it's just. And if it is Hodgson who told him to do that, I mean, if Harry's picked up the ball himself and said, "I'm taking this corner," then fair enough. That's absolutely fair enough.
But he must have at least.
However,
but
surely you have a designated. Yeah, you have to have someone who's designated to take corners, and especially when you've got someone like Harry Kane who is as good as he is in the air. He obviously should be in the box, and he should be knowing that. That everyone should be knowing that. And if it was Hodgson who told Kane to play the corners, then that really is a shambles. And it's just little picky things like that really should have been absolutely ironed out before a tournament. It's a really, really big thing. A lot of people are watching. A lot of people have invested a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of heart into it, and everything should be ironed out completely. They should know what they're doing from minute 1 to minute 90.
Right.
Yeah, I completely agree.
Let's stop talking Euro 2016. I'm drawing the line under it right now. That's it. It's all done.
Never talk about it again.
That was quite cathartic. Well done, lads. Finally, I want to talk about a new competition that I know Ryan knows something about. Ryan, tell us about the Nations League.
Yes. So, I don't know why not everyone is talking about it, but it's definitely a thing. It's definitely happening. UEFA have signed off on it. And basically, they have worked out effectively an international European league system, which will replace the current friendly breaks that we get. So, to break it down for you, what they're going to do is they're going to divide. There's 55 nation members in UEFA who will all be in it. The top 12 all go into League A. The next 12 go into League B, and then 15 in League C and 16 in League D. And they're all divided up into 4 pools of either 3 or 4 teams, respectively, depending on which league you're in. So that's decided by the UEFA's European coefficient ranking, of which England are currently in the top 12. Hooray! So that would mean that as things stand, England would go into League A. So they'll make a little draw. We'll have 2 other teams who are also currently ranked in the top 12 sides. And we will play them home and away in replacement of when you currently get the, in inverted commas, meaningless international friendlies. The idea being that in each of the different pools, the top team get promoted and the bottom get relegated, just like in normal league systems. So you have got movement. And if you're in League A, you've obviously got nowhere to go if you get promoted. So the 4 teams who win their pool go into an end of season Final Four, it's called, which is a pretty unimaginative name. But that's like a little playoff. Yeah, it must take them ages to think that one up. That's a little just semi-finals and a final. Those 4 teams, and that will happen every other year. So it means that every summer now, there will be a tournament of sorts happening. So every year there's not a World Cup or European Championships. It was worked out, so there will be the Nations League Final Four finals, I guess you'd call it. And then to take it an extra step further, they've also incorporated it to include how people qualify for the actual European Championships as well. So qualifying goes through there. So basically 4 places go to 1 from each of the leagues. So that means one of the bottom 16 ranked teams in UEFA is guaranteed to qualify for the European Championships, which you decide whether or not you think that's a good thing or a bad thing. Some people say, you should have the best 24 teams, but I don't know. Personally, I think that's quite cool. So I think it's going to be quite interesting. I think it's from my perspective, I think it's a good thing. The idea being that you're playing more teams on your sort of par, which the idea of UEFA is that this will improve football for everyone. So, for example, it doesn't help San Marino getting spanked 9-0 every time they play, so they'd be better off playing Liechtenstein, and at least one of them's got a chance of winning. I think that's the thinking. And likewise, it doesn't do Germany any favours putting 11 past Gibraltar, so they'd be better off playing France, let's say, for argument's sake. So that's the kind of thinking behind it. You might argue the rich will get richer and the poor will get poorer. I guess only time will tell with that. But personally, for me, from an England fan's perspective who goes to games, I think it's really good because I personally am sick of the meaningless friendlies at Wembley, like on a wet, dreary Wednesday night, for a friendly that means absolutely diddly squat, where you get 8 substitutions in the second half, you get a completely broken up game that isn't that exciting to watch. The players know it's a friendly, no one wants to get injured before they go back to their clubs, and there's just nothing at stake. From England fans' perspectives, you still have to go to these games because the way the FA have very cleverly structured the fans' membership system, you are rewarded for going to games at Wembley so that they can fill it with 90,000 people every time. So it means you have to sort of go, even though the game you're going to see maybe isn't what you want to see. So this will change that because now you're going to be going to a game which is going to be guaranteed to go against a fellow high-ranking nation. And hopefully, because there is something at stake, although how seriously everyone will take it, I don't know, but the fact that there's just something up for grabs will hopefully mean that both teams take it a bit more seriously and you'll get a bit more of a competitive game. So it all will see how it pans out, but for me, on the basis of the principle of it, I think it sounds quite exciting and I would give it a thumbs up.
Well, Ryan, you sold me. I love the sound of that. What do you think, James?
I mean, if it was Dragons Den, I'd be handing my cash over right now.
Brilliant.
Sadly, I'm not on a commission.
Absolutely sold. Well sold, man. Well done, mate.
He's on a retainer by the FA. But that's brilliant. Do you know what? We've run lots of extra time, so quite fitting for an international game. It's almost like the World Cup final podcast tonight. So at this point, I have to wrap it up. First, I have to say thanks to Ryan. It's been a fantastic debut, Cap. The press will be going mad for this one. That's been brilliant. Thanks very much, mate.
Thank you, Dan. It's been a pleasure.
We'll have you on the show again, certainly. And James, as always, it's been an absolute blast.
Until next week, mate.
Yep, until next week. So, that just leaves me to say, my name is Dan Tracy. This is the eFootball Podcast. Until next week, good night.